Hi, good afternoon, everybody. This is the panel session for National Conveyancing Week on the practicalities of a better working relationship with estate agents. First of all, I'd like to thank the panel for your time. I know you're all busy. Thankfully, the market is still relatively buoyant. You may tell me otherwise in a minute, but it seems to be, so thanks for your time. If we could just do a brief intro from you all, please. Julie, yourself first.
Well, good afternoon, Rob, and other participants. My name's Julie Tomasic. I'm a legal executive and now licensed conveyancer as well, having been recently accepted for my licence. I've been in the business of conveyancing for a number of years, let's say, and my role has evolved. I'm now at the Smith Partnership, where I am head of conveyancing over 6 offices. So not really a fee-earning role at the moment, although I do run a few files, more management of people and very involved in how to establish relationships, not only with clients, but with introducers such as estate agents. And it's something I consider to be extremely important. So I was very pleased to be invited to take part today.
Sounds like you're going to have some interesting information to relay to us. Thank you. Matt, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. Matt Baldock, owner of Charles David Casson Estate Agents based in Chelmsford, Essex. Been an agent for 22 years. Firm believer that conveyancers and agents, we all want the same thing. We have to get along. I don't really understand the infighting between the two disciplines. So yeah, collaboration, we all win.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Sean, yourself?
My name's Sean Darlow, and I'm a sales coordinator for an independent estate agent in East London. I've been in the industry for about 14 years now, and in that time I've been an estate agent, a mortgage broker, and for the past 10 years, predominantly my working days been sales progressing, so working alongside conveyancers to get the transactions through to exchange of contracts.
Okay, thanks. Clive?
I'm Clive Smith. I'm a sole practitioner, solicitor since 1979. I've always done conveyancing, apart from 1 or 2 forays into other areas when I was starting. I run a small legal practice in Lewes in East Sussex. We've got 5 people, and we get on with all our agents. But one does have difficulties occasionally, and I'm keen to learn of ways in which we can help and explain how we can also help agents. So this is going to be interesting.
Good. Okay, thanks, everybody. Our 5th participant, I think, has disappeared, got internet problems. Russell, if he joins us, I'll introduce him later. So let's sort of cut to the chase then. From my opinion, viewpoint, it would appear that the agent-conveyancer relationship is at times more strained than it used to be in the past. If it is, why is that, and what can be done about it? Let's start with Sean.
I suppose whoever the lawyer is acting for a buyer and seller, estate agents need to know that a buyer is buying and a seller is selling, so that we need to know that things are progressing throughout the process. We need to know that a draft contract pack's been received, searches submitted, that the solicitors are in fact instructed to begin with. So we need to know that these milestones are being met throughout the process. The solicitors that we recommend, we do so because we trust them, essentially. We don't need to chase them every day to ensure that inquiries aren't sitting on someone's desk, that management packs aren't being chased, and we trust that also when we need an update, we're able to get an update, which is concise and quick. So that's why we recommend the solicitors that we do. If we manage to get a preferred solicitor on both the buyer's side and the seller's side, then we know that our clients are being looked after, and keep emails to a minimum as well, because essentially all our files are consolidated down to a handful of excellent solicitors.
So without giving away any trade secrets, how many solicitors would you say you could work with on a regular basis? That you
I'd say
prefer?
there's about 5 local.
Sorry.
Sorry, no, I was, yeah, so there's about 5 local solicitors that we refer to, and we would like to have more, but the sad fact of the matter is that there isn't as many solicitors as we would like to refer business to, whether it's because, you know, in the experience that we've had, things haven't moved as quickly as we'd like, or the feedback from the customers hasn't been fantastic. But you know, we don't rely on referral fees. We recommend solicitors only that actually provide a fantastic service to us and the customers essentially, and appreciate obviously that the customer is the focus for them. But yeah, if we're to work together, really we need to be working together well.
Okay, thanks. So, Julie, what's your experience? You were telling me before we started recording that you're on a new patch, so you've got some new experience as well as old experiences to tell us about.
Absolutely. Sean has just confirmed really what I was going to say, and it's all about communication at the end of the day. And we should all see estate agents as friends and not foe. There always seems to be this impression that there's a battle line, you know, and people, when the agents are calling again, etc. Well, you know, that's being proactive, and I should never want anyone to criticism any party in a transaction for being proactive. And good relationships are based on trust and, you know, getting the job done. At the end of the day, we have a common goal. So when I say I'm come to a new patch, yes, I'm now in the East Midlands as opposed to the West Midlands, and have been for almost 6 months. It will be a slow process, but one of the things I've already set up is, for example, inviting estate agents. One has taken the invitation and has been into our office already to see how we work and to meet the people and to see what systems we work with. We, in the end, had 3 sets of the team members from that particular agent visit our offices, including one of the directors or owners of the company. And it was a matter of us telling them how we work and how we consider we can work better with them. So do you want to call us? Do you want to email us? Do you want weekly updates or updates every other day? How are we going to set up that communication? So that is something I will always pursue and will continue to sort of liaison with agents as to how we can do and work the job properly and better and get the system working.
So without getting into a discussion about referral fees right now, is that something that you do if you have to?
Right.
You have to say the amount.
I think my position on referral fees is well known in that I've taken part in roundtables before and said that I'm totally against referral fees, and that stance hasn't changed. However, there are different business models, and it would be hypocritical for me to say that here now we don't pay referral fees, because we do. I would like to change that, in that I would like the agents and the referrers we deal with to absolutely say, well, you know what, whether we have a referral fee or not, we're going to instruct, because we know the job will be done swiftly, correctly, and the clients will be happy. And that will stem from a quick exchange of contracts and the job being done. So, you know, yes, I will say I don't encourage, endorse referral fees. It's not something I think we should pay, but we're here with them, and different business models have different ways of working.
Okay, thanks. And Matt, yourself then, how are you finding relationships, and why do you think they're more strained if in fact they are?
I think maybe that the extra strain has come over the last few years where, let's be honest, everybody's been busier. COVID caused some issues. There's no denying it. I think you always feel sorry for yourself. So agents were like, oh, woe is me, we're so busy, forgetting that every time they sold a property, there were going to be at least 2 conveyancers involved. So if the agents are busy, the conveyancers are busy. And it's just about having empathy for the other side and getting on with it. And really, just to echo the other points about the communication, I think a 10-minute chat at the very start of a transaction to say, how should we work together? Do you want to work by email, phone call, once a week? Exactly, echoing those earlier points. The 10-minute call at the start will save you a load of time during the transaction. Like most things, if you set the relationship, and it is a relationship, up properly at the start, then it'll be better going forward.
And is that 10-minute chat with both sets of conveyancers on either side, or just the sale?
Ideally with both. Look, yes, we act for the seller, but obviously we need to help the buyer buy the property. And at the end of the day, there's no great secret, right? This person wants to sell something, this person wants to buy it, and the agent, the conveyancer, predominantly only get paid if it goes through, and when we want that to happen. So everyone has a common goal. There's no point trying to prove you're the most important person in that transaction. It's not about the glory of who did what. It's about getting the customer from A to B. So I think a little quick chat with both parties. If you work with them regularly, that's ideal. But if it's a conveyancer you've never worked with before, we do it when we send our sales memorandums out. We send the sales memorandum and we introduce our sales progressor and say she will be in touch to talk to you about the way you prefer to work. So we're not dictating our terms. We're saying that let's discuss how we can all work together.
And do most firms accept that invitation?
Most, probably a bit of a strong word. Again, we try and work with the same people as often as we can. And I'm very keen to say, from a referral point of view, it's people I work with, not firms. So there was a firm we never worked with for a long time. Then a new conveyancer has been placed there. I was recommended him from another agent. So we met, we got on, and now we use him. So I think that's important. It's important it is a relationship. So I would always work with a conveyancer rather than a firm. But on the whole, most people are open to it. I think people's backs get put up when the agent comes across a bit strong and it acts like they're trying to do their job for them. Whereas if you say at the start, listen, you're the expert, I just want to help. How can we work together? If you're a reasonable human, you're going to be open to that conversation.
And just quickly before we move on to Clive, what information would you share and expect to receive at that stage? Is it about the possible timescale of the transaction and how quick the seller might want to move, or why they're moving, or more technical than that?
Well, I mean, I think that's the basics. Sadly, I did a poll a little while ago, and the thing that most conveyancers wanted was actually the actual names of both parties, which is a terrible indictment on the estate agents. So I'm not here to just purely defend agents. We both have our parts to play. My belief is we should be furnishing with obviously the details, the chain details. Agree. Let's try and agree a time scale at the start, although we all know it might not go through. But I'm a big believer in more upfront information. So some of the TA forms, I would like estate agents to present and actually have a legal obligation to present a lot of the information up front rather than it getting to the solicitors and then that can take a couple of weeks to get done. There's so much that the agents can get done for them. Okay,
we'll come back to the upfront information topic a bit later on. So Clive, what are your thoughts on the question I asked and what's been said so far?
Well, I think the idea of information up front, I made some notes, and one of them was it's really helpful if we have the full names of the parties on the memorandum of sale. And some of our local agents do that, others don't. You just get lucky if you get an initial. But it just needs a bit of work. We encourage them to do that because it saves time later on. So the contract goes out with the correct names in. I mean, there might be a typo or something that needs sorting, but if the contract goes out with the correct names in, it saves having to redo it further down the line. The same with the transfer deed. So that is one way in which agents can really help, and our local agents do that. Not all, but the ones who we deal with most of all. Other areas where I like the idea of having a conversation with the agents at the start, because we've got a better understanding than the clients have of what's achievable, and it's only when things get close to exchange that I find stuff starts to get fraught. I mean, okay, one of the irritating things is we give an update on a Friday in response to a call or mainly email now. And then first thing Monday morning, you're being chased again. Well, that might be necessary where you're waiting for a mortgage offer to come in, and it pops in over the weekend. But a lot of the time, you've got nothing else to say if you've been chased on Friday, and it's Monday. But not always. But I mean, the whole idea is to try and build a team and make sure that everybody understands where everybody is in the chain and so on. Does that make sense? I mean, it's in some ways it's hard to express, but you feel instinctively everybody's got to work together.
Absolutely.
I was going to say, do you know the length of the chain? Do you need to know the length of the chain? And do you want to know anything about the chain, the conveyancers involved or properties or anything?
I think it's sorry.
Sorry, Clive.
I think it's very useful. Go on, Julie, you go.
Well, somebody said to me once that for every estate agent, financial advisor and lawyer involved, you can add a week to the transaction. So it is useful to know how long the chain is. But what I would like to see is us working together with agents and other referrers as well, for the client to be a little more proactive sometimes. We all know the amount of due diligence and compliance that agents and lawyers have to go through now. The client needs to be aware, and if they're made aware early on that they will have to provide proof of funds, they will have to provide evidence of ID, let's get them ready. And also with regards to sellers, getting sale ready. Yeah. So if it's a leasehold property, if we've got a good, if I've got a good relationship with an estate agent, then I will say to them, look, if you're bringing a property to market and it's leasehold, if you've got any questions, if you've got any queries, give me a shout, send me a copy of the lease, let me know who the managing agents are. I'll then be able to tell you if you need to start requesting that pack now or whether you can wait until you've got the property sold. Because I'm sure Clive will agree that some management agents are taking 6, 8, 10 weeks to produce a management pack. So if you wait until you've sold, that could cause a delay. So it's all about talking to one another and let's face it, helping one another to achieve, as you've said, the common goal, which is an exchange of contracts and clients moved.
Sean, what's your views on that then, getting earlier engagement with the conveyancer and the seller? And are sellers savvy these days or not about what's going on?
Matt made a good point about getting sellers to fill in the TA forms and protocol forms earlier on in the process. When they're putting their property on the market, it can take a few working days to get photos done and an advert online at time that could be better spent by the seller. But in actuality, those forms only need to take a day, and they probably wouldn't have too much of an effect on the speed in which a transaction goes through, or not for the majority of transactions anyway. And with respect to chain details as well, I would hope that all the lawyers in the chain are pushing their own transactions as quickly as possible. And I've mentioned it before, and I'm pretty loath at sharing details of our solicitors with other agents, only because what we don't want our lawyers being busy with is calls from various agents in the chain, all wanting to get the same update that I've got, stepping on my toes really. If they can contact me and trust me to be getting updates and providing transparent information, there shouldn't be 2, 3, 4 other agents phoning my lawyers for exactly the same update. I mean, what we need to understand is, conveyancers do have a very, very tough job, and by contacting them numerous times, phone calls and emails, continuously asking for updates on inquiries and such, we're taking up valuable time.
That used to be the bane of my life as well when I was doing conveyancing. So Matt, do you agree times when you will update a conveyancer or ask a conveyancer to update you, or is that different depending on the firms you're dealing with?
So I think there can't be a one size fits all. Generally, it has to depend on the firms we're dealing with. I mean, the firm that we majority use, we kind of will have like a weekly update. And we all know as well, the thing with the transaction is that there's time periods where a week's worth is enough, and then as you get closer, there's times when things have to be chased a little bit. Like when searches go off, there's no point phoning every 2 days saying the search is back yet. You need to know what your local authority is doing. I do think from the agency point of view, better training is needed on the whole in an estate agency on the conveyancing process, because I would suggest there's a frightening amount of sales negotiators that don't understand the conveyancing process, that just get told by their manager, phone that person for an update, and they literally, and the solicitors must get so for, can I have an update? What on? I don't know. I just got told to ask for an update. So I take the point about, giving an update on a Friday and being chased on the Monday. So, but also I do think sharing information is important. I understand, and I get we don't want other agents chasing our solicitors, but I think unless a solicitor knows what the chain is, they can be doing their bit, but almost in the dark. They think they're ready and they don't know, they can't explain why anything else isn't. So even if they get told it's a chain of 4, it's a chain of 5, as much information is useful, really.
I suppose it gets more fraught when clients are on deadlines as well, i.e. they've got to move because of a job change or school placing, etc. So that gets more difficult. Do you relay that information to the conveyancer and say, that is why I'm chasing more now? Do you explain why that might happen?
Yes, but also, I think you've also got to relay it to the client, because ultimately, and again, I'm not here to, I should say I am an estate agent, so I'm not here to bash just the estate agents, but, you got to say to people, do you want things done properly or do you want them done quickly? It's this thing about, I've got to get you online tomorrow. No, you don't. Let's get this paperwork done, and then we'll get you online in a few days if that's the way you want to act. And much like this, if someone comes to us and says, I've got a new job, I've got to be in my new house in 6 weeks. Well, okay, you better get on with the paperwork immediately. And by the way, that probably isn't going to happen, and then you have to go to the solicitors as well and say, this is what they want. I've explained it might not happen, but you're really the expert. Can you tell them? And if the solicitor says, I can definitely do it, then that's fine. That's their shout. But if neither the agent or the solicitor thinks it's possible, but nobody tells the customer that, then you're on a hiding to nothing. And it's just a really, listen, we don't like giving bad news, but sometimes you've got to tell people what they need to hear and not what they want to hear.
You've got to be realistic when it comes to timelines. And again, it's all communication. It's key, isn't it, to every transaction? And that's communicating with client, agent, financial advisor, and all the rest of it. And we all know that communicating with some is easier than with others.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm back in the day when I was doing conveyancing, I used to update some of my estate agent contacts simply by, and this is in the days of letters, not necessarily email, faxing through a copy of a letter that I'd sent to the opposing lawyer, not writing anything on it. He knew full well what that letter was, but he could see that I was either sending out the contract or requesting a contract or raising additional inquiries, and he didn't have to phone me. But now with GDPR, etc., is that a little bit more difficult to do you think, Clive?
Ooh, that's a thought. I rarely copy any correspondence in, but we'll give an up. Say, if we send a contract out, I confirm that it's gone. Did 2 last night and told both agents that the contract's been issued. But I think there is a danger because of GDPR and client confidentiality in copying too many people in. I mean, between the lawyers, it's fine. And if the client has consented to you giving information to other parties, then I think it's fine. That's not a breach of the rules, but you do have to be very careful. Just going back to the chain point, I remember being on a focus group many years ago, and one of the useful things that came out of it is that the clients never understood the length of a chain and who was involved, and the person who's best placed to produce a chain list is the agent, and some do, others don't. Sometimes it contains information about a certain law firm that are a bit on the slow side that you wouldn't want to see, really, and you might not want to say to your client, oh, there's no chance for you reaching the 1st of April for completion, when X, Y, and Z is involved. So it has to be sort of tempered with that. But I think the information, the number of links in the chain, perhaps just with the property addresses and so on, or the names of the Mr. X, Mr. Y, and so on, does give clients a better idea, and that gives them a better understanding of what's going on. The one case in particular where there was sort of full disclosure of the information, the clients spoke between themselves and agreed completion dates and so on that nobody had any control over, and you know it all fell apart because nobody could achieve what they wanted. But you know, it has to be measured.
If I can just say, chain information as well is very useful to know for completion and exchange, because if you can imagine, if you've got 5 or 6 or more solicitors involved in an exchange, and you're all hoping to do that using the Law Society formula, to get all those lawyers at the end of a telephone within a couple of hours can be extremely difficult sometimes. Similarly with transferring funds on the day. So, you know, if you know there are 5 or 6 or 7, you can advise your client, look, if you're at the top of the chain, it's going to be quite late in the day before I can get you your key release. Don't hire your room removal people by the hour. Make sure you've got them, and you know, all day really. So information is you know, is paramount, isn't it?
Yes, on that aspect of it is, and the exchange point is, you know, if we've got a chain waiting to exchange, and you get the situation where you're waiting for a release of the contract, and you're waiting all day, and it's getting to 4 o'clock, and it doesn't happen, and particularly if it's a Friday, and everybody has to stand down over the weekend and then start again on the Monday, it gets immensely frustrating. And there are certain law firms, of course, where they insist on checking with their client, which is a proper thing to do. Can't say that's wrong before they get authority for exchange, even though they had authority the day before. What they could do is get authority the night before, but they always say, and this is an argument that I've had, is, well, what happens if your client dies overnight?
Well, that happened to me. That did actually happen to me.
Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I learnt my lesson. I always speak to the client immediately before I exchange.
So your client passed away, but you actually exchanged after they passed away?
No, I was trying to get hold of my client. I'd only met her the day before, couldn't, so I didn't exchange, and it was rather sad. But let's just say that she had passed away.
Oh.
Well, I remember famously with myself, I was at the top of a chain. It was a very long chain, maybe 10 or 12 properties, and it was going nowhere, and I was selling a probate property. I chased all the way down the chain. It took me a week, only to find out that I was acting at the bottom for a first-time buyer who didn't have a mortgage offer. Now, that was a perfectly good excuse for not exchanging, but that information was not going up the chain to me. In fact, to any of the parties in the chain. Now, if I'd known I was in the chain twice, we'd have saved a lot of time and effort. So, guys, estate agents, why are some agents reluctant to put together a chain sheet, do you think? Matt?
Hard. It's a bit of effort. You know, is the kind of the. I'm trying to give an answer that covers us a bit more in glory, but I think it comes down to training. I don't think there's really formal training on it, and they don't necessarily understand that's how that it could be helpful. And I'm also not sure that conveyancers ever tell the agent that's how it could be helpful, because there's the other thing, it's an education piece. And while we can sit here and say the agents should be trained properly, the conveyancers are in a position to train the agents to a certain extent. And you can say, oh, it's not my job. Well, actually, if you want your life to be easier and for the agent not to keep bothering you, rather than ignoring the call, pick it up and just say, listen, Dave, you're chasing me for this, but in reality, this is what needs to happen. And actually, if you tell most people once, they'll go, oh, okay, I understand, and go from there. Also, with this wonderful world that we live in now with social media, I see so many conveyancers putting something on LinkedIn, criticising agents, and I've had this argument in the past. rather than spending 5 minutes criticising, why not spend that 5 minutes saying, this happened, this is what should have happened? And agents can read that and we can learn. And we can all actually educate each other in this world now. It's so easy to do. So agents need to learn, but I think conveyancers need to help teach.
Absolutely, and I'm completely for that. Yeah, we'd always send people in, either myself or a member of the team into the agents, or have a Zoom or a Teams or whatever, and just discuss the process, because so that they understand what we have to do.
I was wondering actually, Sean, whether agents understand the mechanics of exchange and how a contract has to be released at 10 o'clock till 4 o'clock and then 11 o'clock until 3:30 or whatever it is. I've forgotten now myself. But do they understand how complicated a process that could be, do you think?
I don't think the vast majority of estate agents appreciate it. There's a lot of sales consultants at the front end that are putting deals together, but don't get too involved in the actual technical conveyancing process. They either have sales progressors that do the work on their behalf, or an office manager that does that, and they don't get too involved and don't really get to understand the process. There was a good point made by Julie that obviously if you're in a chain of 6, 8 transactions and the seller at the top is planning on moving home early in the day, it's likely not going to happen, because of course there's a number of exchanges or releases that need to happen before, or they complete, I should say. So when it comes to completion day, it's going to be a long old wait. But going back to what I said previously, the reason I don't myself buy chain sheets, it's because I don't share solicitors' details with other agents, so I can't then expect them to share solicitors' details with me. There is a worry about GDPR, in the sense that I wouldn't want a seller's onward address being shared inadvertently with a prospective buyer, nor the new home addresses of everyone else up the chain. And you made a point about you would know if you're at the bottom of the chain and at the top of the chain whether or not it's going to happen or not, because you appear twice. But I think for the majority of transactions and chains, don't see the same solicitors appearing twice, and I wonder what benefit there would be to a chain sheet if everyone got on with their exchanges as soon as possible. Then it should all come good in the end, essentially. Whether or not there's a chain of 5, 6, 7, 8, it's irrelevant. If you exchange contracts, the first opportunity.
Even maybe that, rather than giving actual information for GDPR, I get that, but maybe simply saying to the solicitor, I'll put on mine, for instance, this is a chain-free property being sold to a first-time buyer, right? So just say that. So, or even if you could say there's a chain of 4, just you're giving people a bit of knowledge as to kind of what's going on there.
And as Julie said, it does help with exchange and completion, knowing how long the chain is and how long the exchange and the completion monies might take to get from bottom to top. So I'm wondering if there's a compromise there, or we just give the number of parties in a chain or something.
Yeah, maybe the number of transactions. I always mention if there's a deadline involved. So if we have a new build set at the top of the chain, or a mortgage offer within the chain that's expiring, then I'll always highlight that with the solicitors. There is a firm deadline that we need to exchange or complete by, and this is the reason. And in the memorandum of sale, we were talking about it earlier, I would include notes on whether or not the seller had power of attorney or was an executor, and maybe some other notes along those lines. So it gives a general picture without really giving too much away, which maybe isn't, strictly speaking, necessary.
You've mentioned there probate sales. I think we're all aware, Clive in particular will be, the length of time that a grant of probate now takes to obtain. Agents, the executors instruct often very, very prematurely, in my opinion now, in that the grant of probate hasn't been obtained. And of course, that can be extremely frustrating. So is that a question you would always ask? Has the grant of probate been granted?
We always ask for a copy of the grant of probate, and if there isn't a grant, then we'd want a copy of the will naming the executor, and ideally a death certificate also, just for our regulatory requirements. But again, I would make a note. Well, we would always mention it to a prospective buyer that probate has been granted, and realistically, it's going to be several months before it's granted. If you're not transparent with that from the outset, how can you expect to keep a buyer on board for maybe 6 months?
And is that the kind of thing you would discuss at the outset, Matt, in your 10-minute call, the grant of probate situation, and when it might not materialise?
Yeah, well, I mean, there shouldn't be too much to discuss on that because, there was a time, and actually for most of my career, you could mark it and you could apply for probate, and they'd run concurrently because probate would be the time that the conveyancing took, because conveyancing timescales haven't changed in the last 20 odd years, but probate has. But again, it's discussing with. So I act for a few private client solicitors, and they say to me, "Do you want to mark it now?" And I say to them, "What's probate looking like on it?" And so I take their advice. If they say it's going to take this amount of time, I say, let's wait till probate's in and we'll do it then. So I don't really understand why a matter's getting into the hands of the conveyancer with probate isn't granted. So, it's not really a conversation we need to have.
Okay. Clive, take this in the spirit it's intended. We've both been around the block a few times now. I'm not sure who's been around the block most, you or me.
Me.
Only just though. What do you think about the modern client, the 21st century client? Are they more difficult to deal with? Are they more demanding because of Amazon, etc., etc.? And how do you deal with that?
They certainly are more demanding. There is a sort of Amazon mentality, if you like. I find that most of them are accepting of the strictures of the process when it's explained to them. They're not so accepting of not getting an immediate response to emails, and it tends to mean that you're spending a lot of your working day dealing with emails that come in from clients and elsewhere, just really just keeping them updated, and the actual legal work is then squeezed in around the working day, so before and after, and it's okay, I'm lucky I've got sort of 3 people I can delegate to, that's progressing it, but a lot of the front facing inquiries come to me, and I do find sometimes that I just have to switch it off and then go back to it, because you just find you can't get anything done. I don't think clients are any more demanding than they have been. They perhaps can be. You do get those who are a bit full of themselves, but you get that in every walk of life. It's just how they're managed. We just try and keep on top of it to make certain that they're informed. I mean, I think when you get 100, 120 emails a day, it's too easy to miss one. No matter what strategies I have in place, I do miss them, and particularly as I've got older, it's become more difficult. Overall, I think they're the same as they ever were, but the modern day client is a bit more, I don't know whether it's demanding. I just think they're keener to get the thing done, I think, and they've also chosen carefully who they instruct. We found that as a lot sort of moved away from the larger operations, and have wanted the sort of bespoke personal service. Not always. I mean, there are some clients who are actually fine with all of that, and they're more techie, using apps and things like that, and all of the very slick bits of software that a lot of the firms like Leap and so on are offering, In Touch and so on. Is it In Touch? In Case, one of them anyway, which is very good. And you know, but when it comes down to it, I don't think it makes any difference. It's a people job, and it's how you relate with the people. Having said that, I mean, I find that very often I don't either get to speak to people or see them, and it's all dealt with over email.
Do you agree with Clive on that? And do you think the 21st century client wants to know as much as the 20th century client about the process, or less, or more? Is it the same?
Well, I would first of all like to say that that the process is easier, is quicker, and is better than when I first started in this profession. I would love to say that, but I can't, because I now consider it takes probably longer to move and achieve completion and exchange than it did, 40 odd years ago. And a lot of that is, I'm sure you'll all agree, to do with compliance. It is a matter of being proactive with clients, but I agree, I use that Amazon effect phrase quite often. Clients do think that it's a product almost. And although we are process driven, they fail to realise that buying or selling a house is a legal transaction. And as such, we do have to have a regard to the process and to the legalities of buying and selling a property, which can be fraught, it can be involved. And, you can't always rely on things being correct, the title being correct, the planning being correct, and not everyone wants to deal with everything by way of an indemnity policy. So it is a matter of communicating that to the client. Client sees the house, all they want to see is the keys and moving in. So it is a matter of trying to communicate with the client what exactly is involved, and not wanting to elaborate too much on the technicalities, but explaining things to your client in a way that they will understand.
Can I ask the solicitors a quick question on that, Rob?
Yeah.
When I was younger, an estate agent's favourite phrase to hear from a solicitor is "take a view" and indemnity insurance. And it just seems that when I was younger, we heard that a lot more. And this was raised at an estate agency conference the other day. The general consensus was we used to hear, "I'll take a view" on sensible matters, or indemnity insurance, covenant consent, that a bit more. Has that changed, or is that just our perception? My feeling is, now living in an ambulance chasing society where people are quicker to sue you, solicitors aren't as keen to do that kind of stuff. Or is that just me getting that wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I'll let Clive and Julie comment, but that's definitely changed 100%. I mean, I used to take a view a lot on things, and my report to my client before exchange usually was, I would buy this house myself. It's a good title. I didn't send them anything half the time, and they were fine with that. They trusted me, and to a degree, I could do that. What do you think, though, Clive? Has it changed that much?
It has changed massively. I often still invite my opposite number, conveyancer, solicitor, whoever, to take a view, and nobody ever does anymore. We want indemnity insurance, we want a deed of variation, we want this, we want planning consent retrospectively. Nobody applies any common sense, and that's part of the problem. But the reason they don't apply any common sense anymore and follow it by rote is because of indemnity insurance and the fear of being sued by the client if you've made a mistake, or sued by a lender if the lender repossesses and they have to sell the property at a loss because you haven't covered the point, or just generally it's not in their nature to accept what you're saying. I go to all sorts of ways to try and justify their not needing a policy, or that the position is legally acceptable, but so much of the time you're bashing your head against a brick wall, and you have to say, okay, let's have indemnity insurance to get this over the line. It's the only way some of the time that you'll get it, and people just they don't actually think about the legality and legal issues. They just want to cover their back. So that's why the indemnity insurance comes in.
Yeah, I always explain to clients that an indemnity policy is a sticking plaster, not a solution. And again, as a lawyer, I would rather solve the problem. So I would always spend time trying to solve that problem. And very often, with a little time and application, you can. And you speak about acting for client and lender. And again, I use the phrase, we wear two hats. And we have to wear those two hats and advise the client and the lender in exactly the same way. So there is a huge responsibility there. You may have the client saying, well, I'm happy to go ahead. But having explained the scenario and the situation in exactly the same terms to the lender will often come back and say, well, if you're happy as the lawyer acting for us, we will go ahead. And that really does make you think, are you happy to go ahead? Even if your client is pressurising you to, because the risk will be yours ultimately. Because if it goes wrong, then you've made a mistake. So you do have to think and consider these things very, very carefully. Also, with regard to indemnity policies, it's a huge thing to read the small print. You never know how good an insurance policy is until you come to claim on it.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I'm not comfortable in offering indemnity policies or accepting indemnity policies unless every other avenue has been looked into.
Okay, yeah, and I think, Julie, what you were saying there is like quite often clients and maybe agents forget that we have two clients, and that is the client, the fee-paying client, and the lender client. But from your point of view, agents, it must also be annoying when you've got one conveyancer saying it has to be done this way, or it should be done this way, or this is the law, and another conveyancer saying something different, and they just butt heads and nobody will back down.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's not too much you can do on that. You just listen to both sides and you speak to the respective clients and see who backs down first, really. And sometimes indemnity is offered and suggested by the agent as a way out. But I appreciate also that the profession is fighting a losing battle, and we talk about the conveyancing process taking longer and longer, despite these advances in technology. Conveyancers would once upon a time send letters to each other with inquiries and rely on the DX or the Royal Mail to get correspondence across, and now everything's instant with there is faxes also from lenders, I know, but despite all that, things are taking longer, and it is because of lender requirements, and it is because of the red tape. In recent years, the process has taken longer because there's been escalating ground rents, there's been modern estate rent charges, there's been these new EWS1 forms that we're kind of getting over now, but now we've got leaseholder a deed of certificates to kind of get our heads around. So there's always something else, something new to complicate matters and make the process longer and longer. And when you speak to buyers and sellers and say that, the search has been submitted, but the result of the local authority search is going to take 4 weeks, because that's how long it's taking, they balk at why things are taking as long as that. I know Land Registry is trying to centralise that sort of data, but they've been trying to do that for a number of years, and people want results today, don't they? And it does, as you said earlier, I do feel that the younger home movers put more pressure on agents and on their lawyers, maybe more so than the older home movers, because they're just not used to having to wait for anything. It's almost inherent now that things can be done instantly. You can Google the answer to questions. You've got AI. You can book tickets, order this, that, the other online within a matter of minutes. So people don't seem to understand that you might have to wait 16 weeks, 20 weeks before you exchange contracts.
Sorry, Matt. I was going to say, I do think some conveyancing firms make a rod for their own back on that, because the amount of times we'll get the BDM from a firm come in all smug, thinking that he's invented the wheel, and because they've got an app, and there'll be these milestones will be ticked on there. And to be honest, pretty much everyone's got that. But when you're saying to a tech-savvy buyer, so the buyer in their head lives in the Amazon world, and the solicitor's going, here's an app, everything's updated in real time, you'll see everything. The buyer is hearing it's going to be really quick. But what the solicitors really need to be saying is, there's loads of red tape. This is the best we can do. We can make it a little bit transparent, but there is still a lot of work going on, because I think but ultimately with the public, they'll hear what they want to hear. So if you say, here's an app to speed things up, they're going to hear, great, tech's going to whiz it through, and it just isn't the case.
And the apps don't always provide enough detail as well. It's not good enough to just say we've got search funds on account. I need to know to tell the chain and tell my seller that searches have in fact been submitted, and when is the local authority search due back? Because if it's going to be 4 weeks, I need to tell my seller that, potentially if this buyer solicitor doesn't raise inquiries piecemeal, then your solicitor's not going to hear anything for 4 weeks. So don't complain 3 weeks down the line that your solicitor's not heard anything at all.
And clients need to be proactive as well. I mean, we use an onboarding process, we've outsourced our onboarding. The completion of those forms, the client questionnaires, the client can't go on to the next question until they've given the answer to the previous. For example, national insurance number. Lots of people know their national insurance number off pat. I don't. If they have to go away and do some research, you'll find that, I'm finding that clients are taking longer to return the forms because they're a little bit reluctant to put the effort in. But they don't seem to understand that we can't actually go forwards until they've completed that onboarding process. The same with ID. Even in this day and age, we have lots of people object to having to use and comply with the digital ID requirements, which most firms, no, you don't walk into the firm with your passport and your driving licence and utility bill. You have to use an app and you upload it all. And for some reason, clients either resent that or find it difficult. But I think you can help us agents by explaining to the client, look, your lawyers won't be able to do anything until you've done all of this as well. And encourage them to get on and themselves be proactive, because we're subject to regulations that we can't actually go forwards until we've done all our checks.
Yeah, and you touched on it earlier, Julie. I think that the process has become, I wouldn't necessarily say harder, but far more challenging than it was back in the 20th century. Excuse me. I think back then we maybe had, 7 to 10 plates to keep spinning at any one time, unregistered titles, etc. But now I think there's 15, 20, 25 plates spinning. And Sean touched on some of that with, the EWS 1.4. We've got Japanese knotweed. And now, of course, we've got the Building Safety Act, which is going to cause a nightmare with these whole transactions that we've seen. So it's becoming far more challenging, and it's no wonder that transaction times are getting slower. And if there's anybody in authority listening to this in the government, for God's sake, do something about it.
Well, the home buying and selling group are really trying, aren't they? What with the WASPI and liaising with estate agents, and they've really put some effort into trying to pull the process together. But of course, unless everybody subscribes to that and everybody gets on board with it, then it's not going to happen. No,
and I think we've got a slight problem with the number of conveyancers we've got. We've got 4,000 firms out there, and maybe 1,000 do most of the transactions. The 3,000 do a lot of transactions, and they don't really know, some of them, what's going on in the real world, because they never go to conferences or watch webinars, etc. And they're not really bang up to date with some of the things they should be. Perhaps.
Well, it doesn't seem that long ago that I was still dealing with firms who would not accept electronic contract packs. Everything had to be printed off and sent to them in the DX or the post. And you're not talking years ago, you're talking months ago.
Before we sum up, can I just ask the agents, do you think there is an issue with older conveyancers retiring, merging or whatever, and young blood coming in? Do you think we're going to have a shortage? Is that what you're seeing or not? Sean?
Yeah, well, we're definitely struggling to find really exceptional solicitors that we could recommend a business to. Sir Chapman, I think, had a report out in the last couple of weeks saying that in the last 10 years, the number of transactions has doubled, yet there's 10% fewer conveyancers working in the industry. It could be said that a lot of the solicitors are leaving the industry because of the pressures. We had a really good solicitor retire a couple of years ago, shortly after the stamp duty holiday came to an end. We saw a massive spike in exchanges and completions on the run-up to the stamp duty holiday coming to an end, and it broke the back of a lot of really competent solicitors. It's just a shame to see them go. And it's not just the pressure, but it's also the fees as well. There's an erosion of fees, I believe, and part of that is referral fees, because of course it's redirecting money away from the firms, money that could be spent on training and better technology and retaining staff, and it's a real struggle. I can appreciate.
And you find the same?
I think, yeah, to be honest, I think this goes back to my point at the very start of the meeting, where agents and conveyancers, we've got a lot more in common than we think. So estate agents in the professional world, estate agents are the bottom rung, the way we look down. Pay is notoriously low, and we lose a lot of good agents to other industries such as the recruitment consultants and things like that. And without being disrespectful to the rest of the panel, I'd say conveyancing is probably the least attractive of the legal world. I went to law school. Nobody in my class was sitting there saying, "I can't wait to be a conveyancer," and it didn't happen. I think, but the thing is, I think actually both jobs are incredibly important to people's lives. They might not be glamorous, but if you think about what we actually do in empowering people to get to the next journey of their lives, it's very important. But I think from what I can see, the pressure that conveyancers have been put under over the last couple of years, conveyancers, a lot of them predominantly female, trying to cope with children as well, work from home, that kind of thing. It does seem to be a lot of pressure. If the money, I don't know about the pay, but if the money isn't what it was or what it could be, yeah, I can see struggling to recruit to be an issue.
I should have said this at the outset. I wanted to ask you one quick question at the end, because we are nearly come up to the end of our hour. If you could see or implement one thing to improve the relationship between agents and conveyancers, what do you think it is? Now, feel free to jump in, because if I ask the first person, they haven't got their answer ready, that's a bit unfair. So go on, somebody answer that one for me.
Let's be friends and communicate.
Yeah, communication's the key.
Well, I think agents would say lawyers don't communicate.
Well, as lawyers, we have to encourage our team to do that.
Yeah,
there is technology out there, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to name the brands, but there is technology out there that exists where all of our notes would go into a central area, should be secured in the blockchain, so they couldn't be changed, and it would be the most transparent there was. So the solicitor would update the notes, the agent, the mortgage broker, and it would be there, and nobody could alter it, nobody could change it. That would negate the need for about 70% of phone calls. So the actual communication, the phone communication, would be dealing with the issues, the down valuations, the Japanese knotweed, whatever had come up, and the bog standard stuff could all be taken care of if we'd embrace technology. We're signing up for it in my firm, but if the solicitor doesn't sign up for it, it doesn't work. Or if me and the solicitor sign up, but the other agent doesn't, it doesn't work in the chain. So the problem is the industry needs to embrace one solution.
Yeah, and if they're using technology that provides updates, it needs to be updated as well with the latest information. Now, a lot of the calls and the emails I make is to check on milestones. Has the solicitor received their formal copy of the mortgage offer? Have searches been submitted? When's the local authority search back? If there was a portal where I could see, the latest update on these milestones, there'd be no reason for me to contact the lawyers. They can get on with their work, and the only time I really would need to get involved would be to help manage situations and delays.
Yeah, okay. I think it's been a great discussion, and hopefully the audience will go away with some thoughts, new thoughts and ideas. I think the one thing that jumps out of me is maybe we should all consider having Matt's 10-minute talk at the beginning of every transaction. We could forget TED Talks. It's Matt's talk.
Matt's talk.
Well, look, thank you for your time, everybody. We have come to the end now. It was really interesting, really great. Let's hope we can improve the process over the coming months and years, because we don't want it to get any worse than it is. So Thanks for your time. Thanks to the audience for listening. I'll see you all again soon. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Rob. Bye. Bye.